The Witcher is finally coming back to Netflix for Season 2. Fans of the games and book series can look forward to more of Henry Cavill's pitch-perfect performance as Geralt of Rivia. At the same time, they can also look forward to a ton of debates about all the things the TV show changed from the books and the games. Now, while many publications talked about how The Witcher was Netflix's attempt at making their very own Game of Thrones, the creators were adamant that wasn't what was happening. It seemed like their biggest way of communicating that you weren't in Westeros was by giving the first season a non-linear structure. It took a few episodes to figure out that The Witcher's first season was the pulp fiction of the fantasy genre. We saw Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri's timelines all move at different paces, eventually converging in the end. This was a very specific choice made for the series, as neither the games nor the books that they're based on use this kind of structure. The world of The Witcher is dense and full of decades of history we only hear about. Now, that's what's so exciting about an adaptation that has had time to dedicate a giant budget and several episodes to a piece of lore we've never seen. And the most interesting of these is the Fall of Cintra, a major set piece that the first season nails. It's a brutal and chaotic sequence that sets up Ciri's journey perfectly. There's a major difference from us learning that Ciri's afraid for her life and seeing exactly why she's so terrified with our own eyes. A great deal of time in Season 1 is spent on Yennefer's backstory. Her journey from an unwanted hunchback to the beautiful and powerful woman we know from the books and games ended up being one of the show's most impressive additions. That's because her history isn't nearly as fleshed out in either property. We knew she was a miserable hunchback in her early life, but we didn't know the whole story behind it. Fans of the game series were immediately put off from the first look at Netflix's take on Geralt. Now, this didn't have anything to do with how Henry Cavill looked in the role. Even the original writer has admitted that Cavill perfectly embodies Geralt. No, their problem came from how many swords Geralt had strapped to his back. Gameplay in the series focuses on Geralt switching between his steel sword, which he mostly uses for sword fights with people, and his silver sword, which he uses on monsters. There's a good chance that a later season will see Geralt gain a second sword to make him closer to the game version. Fans of the series have praised not only Henry Cavill's performance as Geralt, but also his smoldering good looks. It's no surprise that the internet has showed the math behind why Geralt is the hottest fantasy hero to ever swing a sword. He combines the long-haired supernatural good looks of Legolas with the grit and edge of Aragorn. Now, this is a big difference from the game version, who has much more pronounced facial scars and isn't nearly as handsome. It's gotta be hard for game designers to compete with that Kryptonian bone structure of his. While Geralt seems at times lifted right out of the game or the book series, Triss is almost a different character entirely. The long, straight red hair that was iconic to Triss Merigold before was now completely different. Triss also isn't treated with as much care as she is in either of the other takes on The Witcher. She's a primary character in those stories, while the Netflix series doesn't devote as much time to her as it does establishing Yen, Geralt, and Ciri's storylines. This will likely change once she starts taking a bigger role in the main events surrounding Ciri's destiny. In the games especially, the love triangle between Geralt, Triss, and Yen is a big deal. The Witcher 3 devotes a lot of energy to this storyline, forcing you to choose between the two women, breaking one of their hearts. Or you can try to have both romances, angering the two women once they find out. The show may not adapt this part of the series at all. Geralt and Triss weren't romantically linked in the first season of the series, but there's still time. There's also still time for the famous stuffed unicorn to make its appearance as well. If there is one thing the Witcher series does better than the games or the books, it's the fight scenes. In the games, Geralt spins and dodges with all the grace of a trained dancer. The games also make sure to show how brutal Geralt is by giving him visceral finishers that split his enemies into pieces. Cavill's Geralt has all that grace, but has 10 times the brutality. He takes his enemies' weapons, uses swords as projectiles, and often takes as many hits as he gives out. I don't know about you, but I've watched that fight with him and Renfri's men like 30 times. The Witcher games use an interesting framing device to set up Geralt's story. Like Wolverine or Jason Bourne, Geralt awakens in the first game with no memory of who he is or why he has amnesia. The player then has to learn about Geralt the same way he does, piece by piece. Seeing as how the series has already chosen to not start Geralt's story this way, it seems highly unlikely that after they adapt The Lady of the Lake, they'll show an amnesiac Geralt try to figure out what we already know. That just doesn't sound entertaining. I thought that the creatures in the Netflix series were a bit of a mixed bag. The dragon, for example, looked incredibly fake to me, especially compared to the ones Game of Thrones showed off. This was an easier problem for the game to solve, seeing as how they didn't have to make it look photorealistic. On the other end of that spectrum was the Striga, which used practical effects to great success. That creature looked much better than the game version of the monster. I hope that future seasons continue to rely more on practical effects and leave the cheap CGI in the late 90s where it looks like it belongs. While Geralt is a supernatural man, you'd have no idea if he wore a dark pair of sunglasses. That's because the only real giveaway that he's a Witcher are the yellow eyes that he sports. The color's the same one as the ones in the games and the books, but there's one major difference. Unlike other depictions of Geralt, Cavill's Witcher eyes don't have the slits that give the Witchers a bit of a cat-like appearance. Personally, I like the Netflix versions a little bit more. The cat eyes always freak me out for some reason. The Netflix series isn't as subtle about Ciri's powers as the books are. It takes a while for us to understand the full extent of Ciri's abilities in the novels. In the TV show, it's pretty clear that Ciri has some intense magical abilities that she seriously needs to get under control as soon as possible. This was probably a good idea for a TV show that needs to show the exciting stuff early on. Now I'm just ready for the 5th season when adult Ciri is teleporting all over the place and cutting people down like Geralt. For the most part, CD Projekt Red's take on the novel series is widely regarded as one of the best game adaptations ever. There is one choice that I really don't care for, though. Dandelion is just the most annoying side character in the series. Every time he showed up, I kinda just wanted him to stay in the trouble he found himself in. The Netflix series, which uses his real name Jaskier instead, features a much better take on the character. I mean, the show kinda peaked with Toss a Coin to Your Witcher, which is just a banger. Every version of Geralt of Rivia is supposed to be a single-minded monster hunter for hire who lets nothing draw him away from his mission. While the Witcher game series stays true to who Geralt is, they are also infamous for providing a ton of side quests that make Geralt look like a glorified errand boy. I mean, imagine an episode of the TV show that starts out normally and then devotes the second half to Geralt trying to find someone's frying pan. Thankfully, Netflix seems to be giving us the side quest-free version of the White Wolf story. If there is one gameplay feature from CD Projekt Red's series that's as famous as the games themselves, it'd be the card game Gwent that Geralt is obsessed with. Practically every other NPC in The Witcher 3 has the option for Geralt to challenge them to a game. It became so popular that it went on to become its very own game series. This is actually something I wish the series would include. An episode where Geralt just spends the whole time playing a card game would be amazing. Hey, look, everyone has to unwind somehow, right? Judging from the comments online, I'd say the biggest thing that Season 2 is going to change is that there will be 300% more Geralt in a tub scenes. That is the part of this adaptation that all fans seem to agree on.